Hey everyone, and thank you for listening to the AfterTaste Movie Podcast. Happy Monday, and I am joined today by my co-host, Chelsea Rodriguez. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Good. How was your day?
Busy.
Busy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sundays are the worst. I'm also joined by a new guest, Katelyn Adamns. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Brian.
I feel like it's been a long time that I've been doing this, and you haven't been on yet, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, we've been recording something that's never going to come out for like a year now, but besides that point,
Listen, I still have the phone files. We can still release those.
we could still release parts of each episode.
Perfect. We'll just smoosh them together.
And you're coming out with a new podcast, aren't you? Actually, what's it called?
Yeah, it's called Daddies, Death, and Dice.
Care to elaborate at all what the hell that even means, or what is it gonna be?
So I'm actually doing the podcast with your wife.
They don't know I have a wife yet.
With my wife.
Oh, stay the hell out of me.
With Chris, and I think it's gonna be just a little bit of everything. I say podcast, but we're definitely going to try and move into some Twitch streaming, YouTube, etc.
Yeah, on the maybe it's a network, YouTube Plus, and we have our content on there. Other people, when they eventually decide to do something, will also have stuff on there.
Yeah. Someday. We have a Twitter. You can follow us there. I drew a logo and everything.
And what's your handle?
It's a good question.
It's like Daddy's Dice or something. I forget.
I'm pretty sure it's Daddy's Death N, like the letter N, Dice. Because I don't think Daddy's Death and Dice fit.
Wow, well, like a network didn't fit?
Yeah, like network.
I
also made that Twitter, for the record.
That was great. That's a great time. Yeah.
It is just Daddy's Dice. I don't think I actually picked it. I think it was just what Twitter recommended.
So you just went with it? Like, it wouldn't be there forever?
Well, I can change it.
Like, if it successfully worked, you wouldn't have to say that all the time. It'd be like, at Daddy's Dice.
At Daddy's Dice.
Daddy's Dice.
You know what? I'm not mad about it.
It's a good time.
Yeah, it's Daddy's Death and Dice because we're going to play daddy games.
Daddy games. Can you tell me what that means?
So we're going to start with Dream Daddy, a dad dating simulator, which is where you play as a dad and you date other dads.
Wow, like romantically or just...
Yeah, romantically.
Fantastic.
It's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah. I've played it through before. Christina hasn't. It'll be a lot of fun.
That's it, and it's what was it the game called again? I'm sorry.
It's called Dream Daddy, a dad dating simulator, or for short, it's called Dads.
One of those simulator games, right? My favorite simulator game I've seen so far is the KFC romantic one. Have you guys looked that one up yet?
No.
It's like it's like a cheesy choice based like simulator. Basically, what's the KFC guy's name?
Colonel Sanders.
Colonel Sanders, yeah.
Romance.
He's a pretty Colonel Sanders.
Oh my God.
In college age, and yeah, it's very interesting. Also a big fan of I Am Bread, which is also another simulator. And I was also just looking up a couple things on Rooster Teeth. They were doing a Let's Play for, I think...
That goose one? The unnamed goose game?
I think that one's out. They're also... the one... Oh my God, I can't talk today. But the one they were doing was the pigeon simulator. And they were going around pooping on people's heads and eating and making nests. And that was from the same makers. And also, I'm Fish, which is a... I didn't watch it, but I believe you're a fish.
Yeah, yeah.
That would make sense.
When you talked about the pigeon one, I thought you were going to talk about a Hatoful boyfriend or whatever, where you date pigeons.
What?
But you're a human. You're the only human in bird school in a post-apocalyptic world where birds have taken over.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but that sounds so much better than the synopsis for birds in general.
It's so good.
Hitchcock could probably get a good movie out of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to movies, I think. So our first topic today is we're going to talk about the Terminator Dark Fate and how much it didn't do well this weekend, actually. So the latest movie came in at about $29 million for the U.S. and about $123 million for the worldwide run. And it looks like that's going to be really bad for the studios because their cost was about $185 million to make it and produce it. And it probably had about $150 to $200 million marketing campaign. Due to the fact that it is a big franchise. Right. So that's not good. And they say it's going to cost them about $120 million.
Oh.
That's, at this point, $120 million. I didn't look up this weekend's run for it. I can't imagine it did very good. But That was Skydance Media, Paramount, and Fox. They decided to...
Oh, boy.
Fox, Disney, they're fine.
But Paramount.
Paramount is not in good shape. And Skydance is... They're doing okay, but every once in a while they'll put out something like Jupiter Ascending, and they'll lose $300 trillion. But that being said, this weekend also we had Dr. Sleep come out, which is another case of a big IP, basically Stanley Kubrick's The Shining sequel is what it's built off of, and it only made $14 million this weekend.
That's heartbreaking.
14.5 and only 19 worldwide.
Wow.
So it's crazy. These big IPs are coming in with nostalgia from the 80s and stuff like that. And I think what we're talking about today is more of a conversation of what's going on with that trend. I think it's kind of going more to that narrative. Mm-hmm. But as for the Terminator, do you think the Terminator franchise is done after this?
As someone who has yet to see the new Terminator movie, I feel like maybe it has. Mm-hmm. It's past its prime, is I guess the good word to say it and everything. Mm-hmm. It's been so long.
Yeah, it's past its prime, but I've seen the movie personally. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing about this conversation that's so interesting is both of these films were very well received. People love these movies. They have, Dr. Sleep has like a B+ cinema score, but for a rated R horror film, that is excellent. For Terminator, it's got the best review since T2 Judgment Day. So it's just crazy to see the mainstream audience not show up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a niche following where the people who were gonna see it were gonna enjoy it, but it's kind of falling out of popularity. Woof.
That's good.
'Cause I'm like 85% sure that if I went up to my little brother and I asked him who Arnold Schwarzenegger was, he would have no idea. Mm-hmm. That it's just a question of relevancy, and that it might be the last like blockbuster film that we see for Terminator for a while, but they might try to, cut their losses and go the route of like how The Purge is trying to do a series and just kind of move over to a different platform of media instead.
They actually did do the Sarah Connor Chronicles on, forget which platform they did it on, but it found some success critically, but it actually didn't bring in a lot of viewers.
Yeah, I mean...
either way, but yeah, the Terminator franchise seems like... It's part of a trend right now. This entire last couple of years, we've been seeing franchise after franchise keep going. Independence Day last year. The big one this year was Men in Black International, which came out and bombed real bad. Yeah. And it's just a question of who even wants these movies anymore. The fans are going to want them, obviously, but it seems like in Hollywood that this is becoming a real question now.
Yeah.
Is it bankable to continue to do franchises like this?
I don't think so.
I feel like they need to, I don't know, like maybe get like some like fresh young blood into like the mix of the studios and like really just kind of reevaluate like what we can mass market to like pretty much like all the masses and everything. That's not like something based on nostalgia, essentially.
Yeah, because I think that nostalgia is going to get you only so far. I think that maybe if you really want to keep this kind of franchise going, the best approach is to take kind of like almost like a third-party viewpoint almost, where you just take the structure of the older movies and then not necessarily redo them, but also not necessarily do a direct sequel. Kind of like Ender's Shadow it, where you take the same story but tell it from somebody else's perspective, and that way you'll draw in new people who don't have to have that background of, oh, I grew up with the Terminator films or things like that, but at the same time people who did grow up with it might still be able to go and have that nostalgia factor, but while you're pitching it as a completely new movie. Because I think that might be part of it too, is that when you get all these films that are like, oh, this was like based on a movie from the 80s, like a lot of the kids now are like, well, the 80s were dumb.
Yeah,
like, you're
they'll
wrong.
be like, that was like a long time ago.
Good times.
Yeah, they're like, it's like you're wrong, but also if you wrap it differently, they might be more inclined to go watch it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, with like the Child's Play that came out a couple years ago, they were heavily relying on the fact that people knew what the hell Child's Play was.
Yeah.
And they came out with a movie that could have been called not Chucky. It could have been just called a different I don't know. They could have made up a different story.
A different doll's name.
They literally could have done anything they want. But you also come up with the fact of like movies like The Crimes of Grindelwald, which came out a couple years ago, which felt like it alienated a lot of the people that weren't deep into the lore of Harry Potter. So that's why you saw the decrease in audiences coming out for that one.
Like between Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, the first one kind of had its fresh story, and then the second one went really deep into the lore, where people like me who have a Hufflepuff robe on my freaking wall, I was all for it, but a mainstream audience did not show up. So I think that might be also what's running up against it, is people are relying too much on that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's because we're kind of being seen, like millennials are kind of being seen as like the nostalgia generation, because we have access to that people in the industry are just seeing us being like, who remembers this from the 90s? And they think that that's a good way to capitalize, but they also forget that we're all very poor.
Yeah.
And we can only go see so many movies.
Exactly.
That is also the thing. I for some reason say this on literally every show that I'm on, but the average person goes out and sees 4 to 6 movies a year. It's people in our business, we go see lots and lots more movies. I see 100 to 200 a year, basically. So if you have all of these franchises, most people don't have the money to go out every single. They're gonna have to say,
they gotta capitalize.
They want to say, do I have to go see the Star Wars movie, or do I want to go see Men in Black International? And the nostalgia doesn't carry it enough.
Exactly.
And then streaming platforms also play a huge,
exactly. It's getting
it's
easier.
like, why go out when I can just stay in?
Exactly. It's getting so much easier to just be like, well, I'll wait for it to come up on Netflix, which I'm already paying for. So.
Already paying for like 5 different ones, and it's gonna pop up on one of them eventually.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I just watched 3 movies on Netflix that were great movies. Like the quality of movies that are coming out on just Netflix themselves is also adding to the factor of why would I go out and watch this movie when I have something semi-original here
And spend so much money.
Exactly. I mean, you're spending like $12 on Netflix or something like that. I'm gonna stay home and watch Dolomite Is My Name, which is one of my favorite movies of the year.
It's really good.
It's really good. Eddie Murphy should be nominated for an Oscar for it. But also, like, a dumb movie like Between Two Ferns, the movie. You're not going to see that in theatrical runs. You're only going to see it on Netflix, and that also adds to the problem. Yeah. We're just on a tangent now. I don't even know what's happening anymore, but I think we're going to move on from this subject, and we're going on to the next one, which for some reason we haven't talked about over the last 4 weeks, and everybody else is talking about. And we're movie shows, so that's real disappointing. I was just waiting for Caitlin to come in to talk about it. So anyway, so this is the newest conversation going on with Scorsese versus the MCU. For the people who aren't really versed in what's going on, he basically said, I don't see them, but they're not cinema. I'm going to quote him exactly. I don't know why I'm jumping from thing to thing here, but he had a quote, and he said, I don't see them, I tried, but that's just not cinema. Honestly, the closest I can think of them, as well as they are made, and the actors are doing the best they can under their circumstances, are theme parks. It isn't cinema of human being trying to convey emotional and psychological experiences to another human being. Which is, whether you take that for face value or you try to dig deeper into what he's trying to say, he came out with a new quote which said, "The situation sadly is, we now have 2 separate fields. There's a worldwide audiovisual and reading so hard today. I'm sorry, I'll cut that. I think we should do a bingo for this podcast of how many times I say stupid stuff like that. Like, I'm gonna cut this and then I leave it in. It happens all the time. The situation, sadly, is we have 2 separate fields. There's the worldwide audiovisual entertainment and there's cinema. There's still overlap from time to time, but that's becoming increasingly rare, and I fear the financial dominance of one is being used to marginalize and even belittle the existence of the other one." So there's a little bit going deeper into what he was trying to say there, but as a comic book fan, to have a quote like that come out from somebody like Scorsese, does that feel like alienating you at all? Or
Personally?
Yeah, personally, I guess.
As a fan of Martin Scorsese, because he is one of my favorite directors, I guess listening to the quote, like the direct quote, because I'd only kind of hear like in passing and hearsay, I don't want to say it kind of like stings, because I still go on the whole notion that film is subjective. Yeah. All film is subjective, and I feel like any form of critique or criticism or opinion is, you know, it needs to be heard whether you agree with it or not. He has a right to feel how he feels. I'm not really bothered by it. Maybe like a little like, oh, Marty, but you know, it doesn't hurt me like some other, because I've like seen like other fans rage, you know, for the fact that
Oh yeah,
he had
for
said
sure. There's
this.
people out there that just take it at face value.
Exactly, they take it at face value. I still admire him as a filmmaker. There's so much I just really appreciate about him, and I get where he's coming from, but I still love the MCU. There's a lot I love about comic book movies.
For sure, I get it. Caitlin, did you want to slap him in the face, or what was your...
I don't, because realistically, I'm not a Scorsese fan. Not by like I dislike his movies, just in that I really haven't seen any of his movies. To be totally honest,
that makes sense, I guess.
I'm sure that they were all movies I wasn't allowed to watch growing up.
Yes, that is 100%
True.
Has he ever made a PG-13 movie? I don't think The Departed was PG-13.
No.
I don't.
No.
Wolf of Wall Street was not rated PG-13.
God,
no.
not Goodfellas, not Mean Streets.
Yeah, so I mean, but I mean, people are critically acclaimed for a reason. I'm sure he's very, very talented. But because I didn't really grow up on his movies, it's easy to kind of take it with a grain of salt and be like, well, sure, but, you know, it's an ever-evolving industry, and, like, I mean, I did some research on him because I read the notes and I got nervous. But I was like, oh, I've never seen a Scorsese film.
But that's totally fair.
But yeah, and so, like, it's the same way that when people started making, like, gangster movies, that it was just kind of, you know, not always highly anticipated or loved and even highly regarded at first. I was reading some of his, like, film history and how it seemed to be that he'd do, like, a really, really good film and then something would bomb, and then it's...
That's essentially what James Gunn said. Did you ever see that Instagram quote?
Yeah, a lot of people came out.
Yeah, I remember you talking about it a little bit, and just, yeah, he's absolutely right. It's the same way we kind of, like, as humans, scoffed at the idea of Westerns and scoffed at the idea of gangster movies. Just because it's a different format of a film doesn't make it less impressive, in my opinion. And like, I get what he's trying to say, where he talks about how it's not the cinema of, like, humans trying to convey, like, intense psychological, like, emotions and whatnot, but somehow the MCU still has an entire generation of people who cry in theaters over these superheroes, people who we shouldn't realistically be able to relate to
identify with,
and yet somehow we do.
Yeah,
because they're still well written and well performed, and I don't know, it's just an intriguing, like, look at it when you say it's like, I guess that I hadn't really thought of there being a difference between cinema and audio-visual entertainment, I guess, or I had, but, like, there's a difference between, like, mindless films, which is what I kind of categorize, like, audio-visual entertainment, and, like, cinema, because you can't look me in the eye and tell me that Black Panther wasn't a cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, that's true. But as far as his secondary comments there, he's basically saying that it's so expensive to put a movie into theaters these days, and movies that are bigger, like the MCU films and the franchises, they get 8 out of 9 theaters, and maybe you'll get one indie film or a film that of a smaller note to get in there. Do you think it's becoming more rare to find a big Joker, for one, Logan, for one, movies that are big in IP with some action and CGI, but they're also very well done? Do you think that's more surprising? Do you think that we're seeing less and less of that, or more and more of that? Because
of the, I guess you can say, the overrun of like MCU films?
Yeah, do you think we're seeing less smaller budget films hit the theaters and do well? I think because they do, like, take up, like, we'll say, like, 90% of, like, screens and, like, multiplexes and everything, it is definitely really hard to find, whether it's, like, independent films or it's just, like, smaller made films, because I do have, like, a general, like, soft spot for a lot of indie movies, and sometimes I'll have to go out of my way to, like, go find them or to go watch them. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a struggle, but I feel like there is kind of a shift turning, because when you had mentioned, like, movies like Logan or Joker, because we are getting kind of like we're getting these
a skeletal structure of like superhero or a comic book based movie, but then they're telling it in like a very like personal way, like Logan is like a noir, like a modern western, and then
Yeah.
Joker is like a psychological thriller, but they still have like the IP of like a recognizable character. I feel like there is a shift and it's turning in the industry, and I do want to see more of it. I hope we get more of it because, yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's always been hard for truly indie films to get the recognition that sometimes they deserve. I do think, however, that as we're talking about, like, people are coming out less and less to the big franchise movies, that there almost is... It's almost been kind of a double-edged blade, where because the MCU specifically has been such a titan, it's beginning to wear itself out on some people, and that is meaning, that is encouraging some people to go to the smaller budget films. Also, it's helping, like, the smaller budget films go directly to, say, like, limited release or, like, Netflix, where they can then, like, up the price for tickets because it's a limited release and go there. And then people will have access to it and they'll get, like, a ton of views on Netflix, like The Irishman, per se.
Strange. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a give and take. Again, just the evolution of that. Sure, there were some comic book films and films like that in that franchise that weren't masterpieces by any means, but that as they kind of grow and refine the trade and it becomes the marker of our generation, because we're the generation of superhero films, like that's where we're at. That we're seeing that branch out into other things, like intensely, like, amazing, beautiful movies like Logan and the Joker, and we're even getting it branching out into other genres, like how getting some horror movies where we have, like, Brightburn, which wasn't necessarily a good movie, but a superhero movie of a different genre.
Yeah.
Or a series like The Boys, which is like
Oh, The Boys is real good.
Love
Yeah.
The Boys.
Yeah, I don't know. I see when I first read his first quote, I kind of saw it from his perspective right away. He's an older filmmaker who has his trait kind of being threatened in a way where a lot of people, when they saw movies back in the day, could only see movies in the theater. So when he makes movies for the big screen, and the more and more he can't get his movies on the big screen, I'm sure the more frustrated he's going to be. So I'm sure this Netflix deal he had with The Irishman, I could do an entire episode on the deep dive distribution issue with The Irishman. It's been coming out for like 7 years now. And it finally went to Netflix, and that's the only reason it's coming out. It's because he couldn't get his movie that he's been working on for so long into theaters, basically. So I can see why he's frustrated, and he's also scared about the theatrical experience, as we all see the theaters having less and less people. We understand that it is trending in a way that is scary for the actual theatrical experience. That being said, we have these streaming services now that have become homes for comedies. They've been home for a lot of horror films some of these days. And it's more and more, we're going to see less and less comedies. We're going to see less and less types of films. And he's scared that one day all we will see is a superhero film in a big theater, because you would rather see it on a big screen. So that's what he's scared about. I understand kind of where he's coming from, but he's not the first person to come out either against this. I think Spielberg came out and said some bad stuff. Bad stuff, that's subjective. But he said some stuff. A lot of older generation filmmakers.
exactly the same way that their predecessors spoke about them for a while.
Just like everybody hated George Lucas while he was making Star Wars. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. This guy can't make anything, and then he made Star
Yeah.
Wars. I watched a really good documentary about the making of Star Wars. It was like 3 hours long, of course it was, but it's really good. It's talking about his early days and stuff. Check that out on one of the streaming devices. I don't know which one it is. But are you afraid that, like, we will see less and less movies of different genres? Do you think that's a plausible thing?
I feel like at the moment, no, because I did hear a while back, like, for instance, like with the MCU, they're taking a 10-month break of, like, showing any movies. and
Yes.
which I think is very, very smart. And I believe if they kind of do that with, since we'll eventually we're getting phase 5, right? Which phase are we in?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't. Whatever.
I think it's phase 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever phase phase 4.
But they already have phase 5 like planned.
Like planned and everything. I feel like with it going on, the breaks are very needed, and I feel like with enough of a gap in between like MCU films where it was like, oh, you could get like 3 movies a year or 4 movies a year, that will have like a nice like little leeway for like other movies to like come in and hopefully sweep up.
Yeah. Go for it.
Oh
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I kind of, when I read this originally, I basically thought I imagined Scorsese throwing a dart at the Disney company in general. That's what I thought it was probably directed at in studios like that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to doing this thing where they're putting out all these shows exclusively on their streaming device and services, and we talked about it last week, Ant-Man 3 very well could be a Disney Plus only film. Do you think that it could be seen as like they're pushing that way? They're pushing against Scorsese directly, where they're trying to get this thing built up. Scorsese's fighting back the good battle he's trying to do, basically. But I see. Do you think we'll see less and less movies?
I think that there's a possibility that we might, for a like certain amount of time, in the same way that if the industry finds a formula that works, we're gonna see more movies that emulate that formula, but that eventually it'll burn out and we'll return back to, because it's a cycle.
Just like cable.
Exactly.
Yeah, we all had cable, and now we have 15 different streaming services, and it all comes back around.
Exactly. It's just gonna be. It's never gonna be like a steady thing where you're like, well, like we're always gonna see like 40% of the movies we get will be indie films. It's gonna fluctuate. Mm-hmm. There might be like a good like 5-10 years where we do see like a lot less of things like that, but then eventually it'll come back around. And that I think that with streaming services and other things, we're getting a lot of opportunities for those films to find other platforms while superhero films are the titans. And
yeah, let's not joke. There's, compared to like the 1970s, I can't even tell you a number. It's like a quadrillion times more movies actually come out every year because filmmakers do get the use of these platforms.
Exactly.
People are signing $100 million contracts to work with Netflix.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, like Netflix is no joke, man. Their budgets are pretty solid.
This year alone, the frontrunner for the Oscar for Best Picture is The Irishman, which is a Netflix original. The second runner-up, I guess, at this point is Marriage Story, starring Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, which is also a Netflix film. Also, there's another one called Two Popes, also a Netflix film.
They're not messing around.
They're not messing around anymore. This is a legitimate, they're making quality films. Amazon Prime started, I think they were the first studio that started getting really into it. They had like Manchester by the Sea, which came out, did really well. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see. I don't know where it's going with that rant, but
just that, even if we see a change in like actual theaters, I don't think people like indie films are going to hurt too much as far as getting their movies distributed. Just maybe not to all the big screens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm less worried about indie because they indie films will have their platform. Normally, they will have an art house place to place, and they'll roll out for Oscars. Obviously, they're going to roll them out in the big cities, but states like Montana, I don't think they have access to all these films. Yeah. So the fact that they have all these streaming devices, it helps them quite a bit.
It's going to help them out.
Yeah, it's going to help them quite a bit. And I think we've talked enough Scorsese. I don't think he cares, but we're talking about him. But
he actually does. Way. This is the one podcast he listens to.
Wow. Hey, Martin, how you doing? All right, so we're going to move on to our next topic here, which is James Dean is starring in a new movie. And it's kind of crazy because he died in 1955. From the filmmakers of recently launched production movie house Magic City Films, which was obtained to use the Dean. That's pretty proper, right? To use Dean's image from his family. Canadian VFX banner Engine will be also working alongside South African VFX company Moy Worldwide to create the filmmakers what they describe as a realistic version of James Dean. This is crazy, right? I just wanted to talk about this story because it started with like Tupac, right? He became like a hologram, and he was at Coachella, and then it's just spiraling into something just out of this world now.
Yeah. I mean, talk about robots taking our jobs.
Chelsea, are you a fan of the CGI creations in movies and when they do stuff like that to, I don't know, just
Like de-age?
I'd say de-age is definitely the same technology, but I'm thinking more posthumously with it. No, I'm not. What am I
Like
talking
Paul
about?
Walker.
Paul Walker. Both ways. Same. But are you a fan of that kind of animation?
I am, to an extent, because as much as, like, as far as we've gotten in terms of technology, because we have made fantastic strides in that field, there is something I always notice, whether it is, like, something like with, like, Paul Walker or any of the, I guess, like, totally, like, recreating deceased characters, like in Rogue One, they did both, Carrie Fisher and
Good old Token.
and whatnot. Something that always bothers me is the eyes.
Yeah.
We haven't quite gotten to the
Got
point.
the eyes, so they're just like creepy a little bit.
Yeah, so it's kind of a bit of like uncanny valley for me. I am a little bit for it. I don't know. It's interesting. It's very new territory. I'm not sure how to feel about it.
Right. Caitlin, are you a fan of when they use this kind of technology?
I think there's ups and downs to it. I'm really, really picky with CGI in general. But kind of like Chelsea said, when they're basically trying to build from scratch, there's always something that's just a little bit unsettling about it.
A little off.
But that de-aging that we've got going is amazing. And I follow this this makeup and effects account on YouTube.
Is it the Corridor Crew?
It's not. She's called Glam and Gore, and she was. I don't remember what video it was, but she was talking about the combination a little bit of CGI and special effects makeup, because I think that you kind of assume that it's one way or the other, that you're either using like SFX or FX makeup, or that you're CGIing it. But she talked a lot about like the combinations of in order to get realistic effects of aging or de-aging people. And it's really, really interesting. And, like, yeah, I'm all for new technology. I want to be able to do it.
You probably make a lot of money. People are using it a lot these days. Is there any case where it blew your mind? You're like, wow, that was really well done, or that was awful. Do you have any, like, examples?
Of a CGI, like, character, like, from scratch? Or
de-aged or from scratch? I think for me, one that stands out would be Hank Pym.
I was going to say
Hank Pym, I think that was probably one of the best.
Yes.
Grandmaster in Rogue One, it was one of the worst. A little scary. But it was striking at the time because we hadn't seen it a lot. I was like, wow, oh my God, it's like he's been dead for a long time. And now he's back.
I think it's a bit different because, like, with like the de-aging of like actors, like in the MCU, is like, for one thing, they're alive.
Yeah.
And so they have, an actual like marker to go off of, and they're just stay still while we put like 1,000 dots on your face, or superimpose onto like a younger actor. Like they, like for instance, like with Kurt Russell in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, they essentially had a body double, but then they had to also like CGI.
Yeah, it's a lot of the
like
same
that.
technology that they use on video game characters and stuff when they do the run-throughs and stuff like that. Yeah, so you kind of see Grandmaster in Rogue One, it legit looked like a video game character, which was kind of my problem with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any that stand out besides Hank Pym?
I was just going to talk about how that was like the main one because my dad was blown away by that. It was, I think it really made the movie for him.
It's like, wow, he's young again.
He was so excited.
I was there.
I just remember him like turning to me in the theater and being like, I think that's really Michael Douglas.
I think so.
And I was like, you're right. And he's like, well, how do they do that? And I was like, with CGI. And he's like, with GCI.
Also, one that I think about now that I wasn't quite thinking of at the time was Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that might have been the first de-aging one I've actually seen.
That one's really good.
That one came out
too.
much before Ant-Man and the Wasp. That came out during Age of Ultron, if I remember correctly.
Wait, are you talking about
With the barf technology?
Yes.
No, that's Civil War, man.
That was a year after.
Ant-Man.
That was the year after?
Yeah, 2016. Ant-Man was 2015.
Michael Douglas was de-aged in Ant-Man and the Wasp, which came out after that.
He was de-aged in the beginning of Ant-Man as well.
He was.
Oh, not as well. Obviously, I don't remember it. You're probably right. Maybe I just blew that one. But that one also stands out as a crazy one where he looked super young.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And there was something a little bit off about it. But in a way that I think that it was because he didn't look like a young Robert Downey Jr., he looked like a young Tony Stark.
That was
and
it.
I think that's what it was, is that they did such a good job of it that they didn't de-age the actor, they de-aged the character, which was very impressive.
I mean, it would have been interesting if they were to, go, probably not because Tony Stark didn't, but, back in the day, Robert Downey Jr., he did have, a little tiny gap in between his teeth, which was cute, but, he got that corrected.
Man.
Money.
Maybe if it would have looked a little bit better, Jake Gyllenhaal would have kept his job, and that poor bridge in London would have taken so many shots from the drone. That's all I'm saying.
Really a true master of CGI is Mysterio.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be in charge of it all.
He's still alive, right? He
he
didn't quite
is.
dead. He has to be
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
Do you think this comes off as a desperate attempt from, a company to try to take advantage of a Hollywood actor who's already dead? Do you look at it as more of honoring or more of them trying to take advantage?
To me it's a bit unsettling because for someone like James Dean, who was a fantastic actor of his time and everything like that. I mean, it's hard to say if the family wants to license the likeness, that's on them. But I feel if we ever got into a space where that was the norm, for instance, if a studio wanted to bring back Heath Ledger, I'd be really upset because he was fantastic, and I even to this day find it a little bit hard to watch some of his movies because he's no longer with us. So it's strange. I don't know if I'm for it or against it. It's just it's Philip Seymour Hoffman too was also fantastic. It'd be kind of off-putting to see him again.
Yeah, it's definitely a little odd. I think I can't really decide which it comes off as, because we did spend a lot of this already talking about nostalgia grabs and wondering if that's kind of what this is, but also I don't know, man. Yeah, there's a part of me that really thinks that these filmmakers were just
I meant quieter, but okay. Yeah, that's her.
I'm sorry, your door's so loud.
All right.
But there's a part of me that really just genuinely thinks that these filmmakers just, were getting a drink together and they were it would be fucking amazing if we could use James Dean in a movie, and that they were oh man, if only, and then they were
we can.
light bulb moment. And if that's the case, I'm stoked for them because they get the opportunity to work with their hero without having to meet their hero, and that's peak.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's different because it's with some with the de-aging, like I said, the people, they're alive, but then with the deceased people, they're deceased. So
because
I don't know.
Yeah, it's one thing when you use somebody who's deceased, like Carrie Fisher or like Paul Walker, when you're just trying to it's really paying homage to them and kind of wrapping things up for them.
Yeah.
It's weird to have an entire movie where you're just it's not it's not oh, they passed before this franchise could be completed, that you're just no actor today will do the job for this film.
It's really strange, and that's why it seems like a cash grab to me, is because this character is not even a main character of the film. He's literally, from what I read quote wise, he's a side character, obviously. And it seems like a cash grab if you're just going back to 1955.
Yeah.
Grabbing a person's likeness, paying off the family. And it seems like they're trying this has never been done before. He died in 1955. So to recreate something in 1955 means you're going to have to stretch, because photographs in 1955 were what they are now.
Yeah.
Movies back in 1955 aren't what they are now. So it's almost like if you were going to cast James Dean in a movie, why not cast Harry Styles and make him look like James Dean? Where I think James Dean would be great in that role, but why are you? It kind of seems like a cash grab to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because people are
And then it's like he's only in there for like 2.5 seconds.
And you also have to think, if people aren't going to see movies like with old stars anymore, like what do you think the main like audience is going to go watch James Dean, whose movies came out in late 1940s and 1950s?
I think that's why it might work. Is because it's such a wild thing. Is that they're gonna get away with it for one movie. They're gonna get away with it for one movie where people are gonna be like, no way. There's no way that they're going to do a good job of this, and they're going to go watch it, and whatever they think, they're going to be like, all right, that was an experience.
Or they'll think, wow, that's what James Dean was like, and it will tarnish his image.
Yeah, exactly.
In which case, it's a bummer. You also got to think about the family. You don't know their situation. Maybe they sold it for rights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but...
Are they...
I didn't do any
What
research.
are they going to do for, like, the vocal aspect?
They said the vocal aspect will be voiced by a different actor. So it'll be a voice-over. Basically a video game character voiced over.
So it's not the Don Rickles route like they did with Toy Story 4?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Got it.
Huh.
Yeah, because, I mean... If they took like sound bites from the 1955s, it's not like it's going to turn out well.
Little bits and pieces.
I know, just like we'll grab it from like all these different movies.
Which is what they kind of did with Princess Leia. I mean,
Yeah.
they grabbed bites here and there, and they kind of made it longer. They took old footage and they kind of wrote the movie in a different type of way. But with him, the sound quality's not going to work out. The 1955 movies aren't what they are now. You can't get a 1955's film in Dolby Atmos unless it's remastered. You know? Anyway, so I think this is garbage and they shouldn't do that. But
That's fair.
I'm going to move on to the next topic here.
Not for like an actual movie. If it was something that they were like, let's do a YouTube video where we
sure. That'd be cool.
I'd watch that. I'd watch the hell out of that.
But but like a big movie, that's just no.
All right, back to this show stuff. My cat's now in the room and being a distraction. How you doing, Bruce? That's what I thought. Great. Anyway. All right, so we're going to move on to our next topic today, which is something we randomly talk about a lot on this show, which is the Matt Reeves Batman. We're all massive MCU fans, but I guess this Warner Brothers stuff keeps coming up all the time for some reason. Anyway, but it looks like the cast is getting more and more filled out. We talked about Jonah Hill passing on the role, getting filled in by Paul Dano, and the other one was Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, I think it was.
Yes.
And it looks like Colin Farrell is in talks to be the Penguin, it looks like. And Andy Serkis, which is my boy, the Claw. Claw himself is in talks to be Alfred, which is so weird to me, but
That brings me so much joy.
I think it's going to be really good. Do either one of these castings excite you, Chelsea?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
They both do.
When it comes to Andy Serkis, are you a fan of, like, obviously you probably liked him as Claw. His other work, have you seen any of his other work, non-mocap?
Non-mocap? Oh God, why am I suddenly blanking on his movies? Yes, I do. There was this movie he did with Simon Pegg, like I think like 10 or so years ago. It was like some like dark comedy. I don't remember what it was about. It was a period piece. It was very kind of like bleak and everything, but yeah, no, I like whenever he does like bit parts. Like for instance, I mean, granted, yes, this still counts as a CGI character partly, but he also had like a small part in like Peter Jackson's King Kong as like the captain.
Yeah.
And no, I really do love Andy Serkis though.
There's a part... Yeah, Andy Serkis is fun. I love that guy. I think that he should play Alfred as a monkey or something. I feel like that would bring a whole new tension to the role that we've never seen before. Or even better, maybe...
Hear me out. Make him the Penguin. Wow. As a penguin.
Oh my. You know what? Maybe...
He's like, wait.
I think even a better option to that, though, is he plays the Penguin in Billy Madison as the Penguin. I don't know if you ever saw that because you couldn't watch rated R movies. Have you seen Billy Madison?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Have you seen the penguin part? There's only like one penguin part.
Yeah, maybe.
Come here, penguin. It's great. He's very drunk. He sees a penguin. Also in that movie, Bradley Whitford. Chelsea. So Colin Farrell, right? He has had an up and down career. That's for dang sure. Do you think he would be worthy of playing a role like this? Did you like him in Fantastic Beasts as the villain?
I did. I really I do love Colin Farrell. There is like a lot of, I feel like he kind of does a good job like treading the line of doing kind of like studio movies, and then he'll do like into more kind of like lower budget films. Granted, I know like a few years back he had kind of not the best streak in terms of like where he was like leading man category, like Total Recall, and
They tried. They
Yeah.
really tried to push Colin Firth. I love Colin Firth so much. Oh, he's gonna be in that 1912 movie coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, he
I
is.
had no idea. Anyway,
I have a friend who's deathly afraid of Colin Firth.
what?
She has a genuine fear of Colin Firth. Like, she has to, like if she sees his name, she gets, like, nervous.
it's weird.
Is it
Yeah.
the spelling or is it the person?
No, she can't watch movies with him. She has horrible nightmares about him murdering her if she sees a movie of his.
Wow,
Wow.
that's
I don't
intense.
think. I'm not sure it's warranted. He's a wonderful.
No,
I love him. It just brings me a lot of
two
joy
of
to
my
think
if I could give a quick shout out, favorite movies with Colin Farrell, and they're both done by Michael Dougherty, who did what was it?
The favorite.
No, not him. He did. God, what was the one with Frances McDormand and
Three
Sam
billboards outside.
Three
Billboards outside
Yes,
Ebbing,
that one.
Missouri.
He did
Oscar
two
contender.
movies with Colin Farrell. One's called In Bruges, which is fantastic, and Seven Psychopaths.
Wow.
Yeah,
I really want to watch that.
I
That's on one of my
recommend.
lists.
I highly recommend. Also, the Lobster.
The Lobster was.
That's the one that's by the person who did the favorite, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's
Yes.
the one. Man, I just watched The Lighthouse. These movies are getting weird these days.
Yeah,
Oh
that
my
one
God.
is very absurd. It's very good though.
Hey, did you like The Lighthouse?
No.
No, you didn't.
No, I'm sure it was a very, very well done movie. I think it accomplished everything it set out to accomplish. I don't like absurdism. I like
That's fine.
characters to have a lot of like. Oh, there was no way to put that politely.
Are you pro mermaid or anti mermaid?
Like for sex or
Yes. You don't have to
Pretty
answer. It's
neutral.
fine. Very PC
I
answer.
have never went to Uber Java. No, my fiance really liked it.
I think we're gonna have him on the show actually to talk about it eventually.
Yeah, I was very bored, and it put me like into a borderline anxiety attack, and not in like a ooh I'm watching a scary movie way, but in like a I don't get it, and therefore I don't know it. I love Willem Dafoe. He's one of my favorite actors. And every time he spoke, my anxiety just like rocketed.
Oh.
And I was like, what is happening? I think I couldn't hear them a lot. I think I should have used a closed captioning device.
You should have probably used
Yeah.
a closed captioning
I
device.
definitely felt like that too.
Direct quote from you today. You said it ruined your day.
It did ruin my day.
That is awful. I hate that cat. Why is that cat in here?
Yeah, because I really, really wanted to like it. I was telling Chelsea earlier that I think if I'd known what I was going into, I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. Just because all I knew was that it was a psychological horror film where a bird is brutally killed.
Okay, breathe. It's, no spoilers here.
That's it. That's as much as I knew going into it.
I didn't know a bird died.
Oh, well, Kaylee told Jude, who told me, so.
Rumors.
Yeah.
But so, for it to be the movie that it was, I kept expecting something different from it. If I'd gone in being like, this is gonna be absurdism, look for deeper meanings, I probably would have. I was saying earlier too that I think I would have really liked it if it was a stage production, but in a film format, it just didn't really click for me. I don't think that's anything against the movie itself. It's just, not something that I'll watch again.
That's fair enough. Well, we're going to cut back into this conversation a little bit. Caitlin, what do you like Colin Farrell as an actor?
I love Colin Farrell as
What's
an
your
actor.
favorite Colin Farrell movie?
It's a good question.
The Lobster.
I do really like The Lobster.
So do
I
I.
finally watched it.
Nice.
There's something about those dark, like,
Yeah.
dramedies that are
Yeah. I'm a sucker for a dark dramedy.
dumb cat.
I like Colin Farrell, but not as much as I like Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
For the record.
Luckily, I don't think we're gonna have one or the other. I think we'll either get both or one or the
Yeah.
other. I don't know,
But I just wanted to point out that my first experience with Andy Serkis as an actor was not in a mocap role.
Oh.
That my first experience with Andy Serkis, and he remained one of my favorite actors, like
wasn't
ever
he?
since.
Okay.
Yes, 13
Yes,
30.
Oh my god! I forgot about that. Yeah, no. As soon as you said that, I was like, shoot, you're right.
I knew Andy Serkis's name before I knew Mark Ruffalo's name in that movie because I was like, that's my favorite character.
You like him. That whole scene.
He's so good.
He is fantastic. Oh my god, we were just talking about that today, and I blanked on it.
I thought you were gonna let me have it. I was stoked. I
Okay,
was like,
you had
nice.
it. There. Thank you for both of us. I forgot about that.
Are you a Batman fan? Do you think you're excited for this one at all?
I'm excited for it. I'm always excited for them. I convinced myself in the interim that I don't like Batman, but I love Batman villains. And I love Batman supporting characters. You know, I just, at some point I had to take a stand in that Marvel vs. DC thing. And now, I understand that people can like more than one thing. But ultimately, my heart belongs to Marvel. And I have some aggressive DC fans, and therefore I have to tell them that I don't like Batman. But nothing against him. I'm also just not a fan of Christopher Nolan films.
Ooh, that's
so.
true. I also want to talk about a story you told me one time where you had to decide between Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Can you explain yourself on that one? Why are you being forced into... Lord of the Rings is great.
I was going to talk about that because I still haven't seen them all, and so I was going to talk about the fact that I love Andy Serkis, but I really haven't seen him as Gollum. But yeah, when I was in elementary school, I was like die hard into Harry Potter. And then because I read like a book a day, I like went to the library and I was like, what else should I read? And the librarian gave me The Hobbit and was like, this is part of the Lord of the Rings universe. Like, you'll love it if you like Harry Potter. And I was like stoked. And I like went and I talked to my best friend at the time and I was like, I'm going to start reading Lord of the Rings. And she was like, oh, good, because then you can be on my side. And I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, well, you know how there's like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings? And I was like, sorta. And she was like, well, you can only like one. I was like, excuse me? And she was like, yeah, you have to pick one. You can either like Lord of the Rings or you can like Harry Potter. And I was already like several books into Harry Potter. So
no going back from there.
I still haven't read any of the Lord of the Rings books, and I've seen one of the movies and two of the Hobbit movies.
It's just so weird because
And the animated
they're
one.
drastically different. They're not even like in the same world.
Yeah,
really.
I'm very aware of that now. It's just that I don't have
Are
access
you
to...
friends with this person still?
Yeah.
Well, that's a tragedy. You should not be. Sorry to that friend who I'm calling out publicly right now.
Yeah, she's gonna be a lawyer. She'll fight you.
All right. I guess she's a she, so go find this she. That's all we're giving out. Anyway, I think that's going to be the end of our podcast today. Thank you, Chelsea, for being here once again. Chelsea, where can we find you on the interwebs? What are you doing? You still drawing, right?
I'm still drawing,
Right.
still waiting. I'm taking commissions on my coffee account. That's coffee spelled Ko-IF. My go-to name is Oceluna, which is OCELUNA. And yeah, taking art requests.
Yeah, send her a cup of coffee. She deserves it. She's real good.
Please.
Caitlin, thanks for coming on. I'm really excited for your podcast. Not podcast. It's not even a real podcast.
It's gonna be.
I'm excited.
Well, because the games is just one aspect of it. There will be podcast.
Good. I mean, you're one of these founding members of this Maybe It's Network. I think that was actually your idea to name it that, wasn't it?
I think so.
I think you also drew you drew the logos
I
too,
did.
right? Yeah. Her main thing is logos. That's what she does.
I love logos.
Is there any you want to throw your social tags out there or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at PaleRad, PAILRAD, like Paul Rudd, but autocorrected.
Nice.
Love it.
Nice.
Or also at what did we decide it was? Daddy's Dice.
Daddy's Dice.
Daddy's Dice.
On the Twitter.
Also exhausted_D&D when we eventually get stuff up for that.
Perpetually Exhausted. Yeah, that's going to be a D&D campaign, I believe, right?
Yep, it's going to be multiple campaigns.
It's going to be multiple because we shot for about a year and 150 hours worth of content is just gone. That's devastating. Anyway, you can find me on Twitter as always at Barno_922. Check out the AfterTaste movie Facebook page on Facebook at AfterTaste Movies. On Twitter also at AfterTaste Movie, not plural. You can also find Maybe It's a Network on Twitter at Maybe It's a Network. Network spelled NETWRK because they're garbage. So that's going to be it for it. Thank you so much for listening to the AfterTaste Movie Podcast. Check out a review on Wednesday and probably scattered throughout. I watched so many movies this week. And yeah, that's going to be it. Take it easy. Bye.